My wife cheated on me while I worked double shifts to pay our bills, so I took everything back and left her with nothing forever. I'm a 30-year-old guy. And for most of my marriage, I believed that the more I sacrificed, the stronger our future would be. That was the mindset I carried every single day as I woke up before sunrise. Dragged myself to the factory for a full shift, came home for barely an hour, and then headed back out for late-night delivery runs. I kept telling myself it was temporary, just a rough patch, just a season we had to push through. I believed hard work was the foundation of love, and I never questioned it. In the beginning, Melissa made me feel like my efforts meant something. She would touch my arm and say, "I'm so proud of you, babe. Once I finish this course, I'll take over for a while. You won't carry this alone forever." I held on to those words like oxygen. They made the exhaustion feel worth it. They made the double shifts feel like an investment instead of a burden. But slowly something shifted. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, so subtle I almost gaslit myself into ignoring it. She stopped greeting me at the door, stopped asking how my day was, stopped leaning into my shoulder during movies. Instead, she'd sit on the couch scrolling endlessly on her phone, her face lit by the screen instead of warmth. When I asked about her classes, her schedule, her workload, she snapped at me with a sharpness she never used to have. "Why are you interrogating me?" "I'm stressed enough already," she'd say, rolling her eyes and turning away like I'd accused her of something cruel. The intimacy faded next. Touches became rare. Kisses felt obligatory. Nights in bed felt cold, like she was on a different planet even though she was right beside me. And every time her phone buzzed, she tilted the screen away just slightly, barely noticeable, lest you were looking for it. I wasn't looking for it, but I saw it anyway, and that's when the unease really began to crawl under my skin. There were days when I felt like I was sleepwalking through my own life. Between the factory noise ringing in my ears and the late-night deliveries leaving my legs aching, I kept telling myself, this is what real men do. They show up. They grind. They hold everything together even when no one sees the weight they're carrying. That belief kept me going, kept me from questioning whether I was slowly cracking under all of it. But Melissa didn't seem to see the effort anymore. Instead, she started pointing out every tiny flaw she could find. "You look tired all the time," she'd say, wrinkling her nose like my exhaustion offended her. Other days, she'd glance at my work uniform and mutter, "I deserve a man with ambition, not someone content with the same job forever." The first time she said it, it stung. The 10th time, it felt like she was chiseling away at whatever confidence I had left. Then came the study groups. Even though her semester had ended weeks earlier, she suddenly had late-night group sessions to attend, sessions that apparently required her to dress nicer, do her hair differently, and leave with her phone fully charged and face down. When I asked about it, she brushed me off with a quick, "It's just review work, don't make a thing out of it." Around that time, my best friend James pulled me aside after work. He told me her social media looked different. More selfies. More nights out. More comments from people he didn't recognize. He asked if everything was okay between us, but I laughed it off. I trusted her, or at least I was trying to. One night after another brutal shift, I tossed my keys on the counter and noticed a crumpled piece of paper sticking out of Melissa's purse. A receipt. I smoothed it open and froze. 2 expensive cocktails at an upscale bar, on the exact night she said she was studying at the library. My hands felt suddenly cold. I waited until the next morning to bring up the receipt. I didn't want to sound angry or accusatory, so I kept my voice low and calm. "Hey," I said, holding the paper gently between my fingers, "I found this in your purse. Were you out with friends that night?" I expected maybe a nervous laugh, maybe an explanation about a classmate's birthday, something normal instead. Melissa's entire face twisted like I had insulted her. "Why are you going through my things?" she snapped, snatching the receipt out of my hand like it was evidence of my wrongdoing. "Do you seriously not trust me? God, you're becoming so controlling." The word hit me harder than it should have. Controlling. I work double shifts to keep us afloat, and somehow I'm the problem. Before I could respond, She launched into a rant about how I use work as an excuse to avoid her, claiming I had checked out of the marriage long before she did. Her voice rose, shaky but sharp, and for a moment I wondered if I really had done something wrong. If maybe I was missing something, but then she mentioned her new friend group, people she supposedly grabbed drinks with. The names rolled off her tongue: Jenna, Kyle, Marissa. Except none of them matched the classmates she always talked about during the semester. And she said it like she rehearsed it, like she had the story ready long before I asked the question. Over the next few days, things only got stranger. She started flipping her phone over when I walked into the room. Notifications stopped appearing on her lock screen. She'd slip away to the bathroom to answer calls, whispering behind a closed door while the shower ran, even though the water stayed cold. One night, as she leaned over to grab her charger, her phone lit up. Just for a second. Just long enough, a man's name, followed by a heart. My stomach dropped like a stone when I finally worked up the courage to ask her about the man's name on her lock screen. I tried to sound steady. I didn't accuse her. I didn't yell. I just said, "Who is he? And why is there a heart next to his name?" Melissa froze for half a second, just long enough for me to see the panic flicker in her eyes before she snapped into performance mode. "He's just a classmate going through a divorce," she said immediately, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed rather than honest. "He's been depressed, and I was trying to be there for him. Why are you being insecure?" She placed a hand on her chest like I'd wounded her, like I was the one breaking something. From there, she twisted everything inside out. "You're paranoid," she whispered one night, brushing past me on her way to bed. "You're exhausted all the time. You're not thinking clearly." Another day, I heard maybe if you weren't obsessed with work, you'd actually understand what I'm going through. She made it sound like my double shifts were a flaw, like supporting us financially was some kind of emotional neglect. And stupidly, I hated that. I hated how easy it was for her words to burrow inside me. So I told her I'd cut down hours. I promised I'd take fewer shifts, even though I knew we couldn't afford it. I tried to save something that already felt cracked beyond repair, but Melissa didn't soften. She didn't meet me halfway. If anything, she grew colder. She avoided my touch, turned away when I reached for her, claimed headaches, stress, exhaustion, any excuse to avoid closeness. Nights became silent. Days became detached. It felt like living with a stranger who used to love me. One night, I walked past the hallway while she was on the phone, her voice low at first. Then she laughed a light, carefree laugh I hadn't heard in months. "He's too busy working to notice anything," she said, and something inside me went still. A few days after hearing her laugh about how blind I supposedly was, something inside me snapped into a quiet kind of clarity. Not anger, not rage, just clarity. I sat at the kitchen table after another brutal double shift, the ache in my back pulsing in time with the glow of my laptop screen, and I opened our joint bank account. I don't even know what I expected. Maybe I just wanted to reassure myself that at least the financial chaos in my head wasn't real. But the moment the page loaded, my chest tightened. There were withdrawals I didn't recognize. Not small ones, massive ones. $200 here for a spa day. $400 for a hair treatment she never mentioned. $1,000 charge from a luxury clothing store I knew she'd never bought anything from. Not for me, not for her. And then, the one that made my hands go cold? Hotel bookings. Multiple ones. Spread out over several weeks. Each one made on nights she claimed she was studying. I scrolled through the statements again and again, my stomach twisting. Every number felt like a slap. I worked until my bones felt like they were made of lead, and she used my exhaustion, my income, my sacrifice to fund. Whatever life she was living behind my back, it wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just lying, it was theft. Emotional theft. Financial theft. A betrayal that ran deeper than intimacy. It cut into the hours I spent sweating under factory lights and the nights I spent delivering boxes while she was sipping cocktails in a hotel lounge. I closed the laptop slowly, the decision forming inside me with sharp edges. I couldn't confront her yet, not without knowing everything. Not without seeing it for myself, that evening. When she slipped on a nicer outfit and said she had another study group, I nodded, grabbed my keys, and pretended I was heading to my night shift. But instead of turning left toward work, I turned right. I was going to follow her. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart was pounding hard enough to make the inside of my chest vibrate. Even then, even after everything's a lies, the coldness, the secrecy, still kept whispering to myself, maybe you're wrong. Maybe she really is studying. Maybe there's some explanation. Hope makes fools of people, and I was no exception. I followed her car from a few lengths back, my headlights dimmed, trying to keep my breathing steady. She didn't go anywhere near the campus. Instead, she pulled into the parking lot of a downtown hotel I'd only ever seen from the outside. One of those places with gold-lit windows and a stone fountain out front. My throat tightened as I parked a row behind her and watched her step out, smoothing her clothes like she was preparing for a date. A minute later, a man walked out of the lobby well-dressed, confident, older than her by a few years at least. Definitely not a classmate. Melissa saw him, and her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. She walked straight into his arms, and then he kissed her. Openly, casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt something inside me collapse. Not anger, not even rage, just a hollow breaking sound deep in my chest. I leaned back in my seat, covered my face with both hands, and for the first time in a long time, I cried, not loud, not dramatic, just broken. Silent tears that burned on the way down. When I finally looked up, they were holding hands, laughing like teenagers sneaking around. He handed her a key card, and she took it with a smile I didn't recognize. Then they walked inside together. No hesitation, guilt. Just two people enjoying a night funded by my double shifts. I stayed there for several minutes after they disappeared, staring at the hotel entrance, my heartbeat slowly dulling into a numb thud. Then I turned the key, started the engine, and drove home in complete silence. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed to plan. Sleep stopped coming after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Melissa laughing in that hotel lobby, her hand wrapped around his like it belonged there. So instead of lying awake in the dark, I started working. Not at my jobs, at the truth. At the file I was building quietly, piece by piece, till the whole picture became undeniable. I downloaded the bank statements, highlighting every withdrawal she made without my knowledge. I screenshotted the hotel charges, the spa payments, the expensive outings. I went through the phone bills, pulling call logs and timestamps. Then, on a night when Melissa fell asleep early with her phone clutched to her chest, I used the reflection in the black screen of the TV to capture photos of her notifications as they popped up: names, messages, hearts, times, everything. I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I didn't ask why. I collected when I finally sat in a lawyer's office, my hands trembling slightly as I laid out all the proof. She flipped through it with a quiet, professional calm. After a minute, she looked up and said, "Because you funded almost the entire marriage, because she used your money to support an affair, you may be entitled to restitution, possibly even reimbursement of the funds she misused." For a moment, I felt something unfamiliar. A small, steadying breath in a storm of betrayal. On my way home, I rented a storage unit under my name alone. I started moving the things I had paid for: tools, electronics, equipment, valuables, one trunk load at a time. Melissa never noticed. She was too busy with her study sessions. I also redirected my paychecks into a new account, leaving only enough in the joint one to avoid suspicion. The lawyer's last piece of advice echoed in my head every time I saw Melissa smiling at her phone. "Act normal," she said. Don't give her a reason to suspect anything. That was the hardest part. It didn't take long for Melissa to notice the shift in our joint account. One morning, she stood in the kitchen with her laptop open, her face twisted in confusion that quickly sharpened into anger. "Where's the money?" she demanded, turning the screen toward me like it proved something. Why is the balance so low? Are you hiding something from me? The irony almost made me laugh. But I kept my voice steady, casual even. Bills, groceries, normal things, I said, shrugging. Why? Is there a problem? She puffed up like a balloon about to burst, crossing her arms and pacing. You're being irresponsible, she snapped. You're supposed to be the stable one. But lately, you're selfish and careless. Hearing her flip reality like that, knowing everything I knew, felt surreal, like watching someone perform for an audience that had already left the room. So, I decided to test her. What did you end up doing last night? I asked softly, leaning against the counter. You were home late? Her answer came instantly. Study group, she said, annoyed that I even asked. I told you this. You never listen. Word for word, the same excuse she'd been using for weeks. She didn't even blink. My phone sat recording on the table behind a glass of water, just like my lawyer advised. Keep her talking. Let her lie on record. It'll help later. So I kept my tone curious, not accusatory. Who was there? I asked. The usual people. Her jaw tightened. Stop interrogating me, she hissed, falling deeper into the trap she didn't know existed, as she launched into another rant about how I didn't trust her. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't notice the reflection in the decorative mirror beside her, but I did. A man's name flashed across the screen. It's the same name I'd seen on her notifications before, followed by, last night was perfect. Same time tonight? The message disappeared as her screen dimmed. But my pulse didn't. The house of cards was shaking. I waited until the weekend, when neither of us had anywhere to be. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of what was coming. My hands weren't shaking. My voice didn't quiver. There was no yelling, no dramatic buildup, just a calm I didn't know I was capable of. I set a folder on the coffee table and said quietly, "We need to talk." Melissa looked up, already irritated. But the moment she saw the first photo, her entering the hotel lobby, arm in arm with him, her face drained of all color. I slid more pages across the table. The receipts, the call logs, the bank statements, screenshots of her messages. Each proof landed like a stone, and with every one, the denial in her eyes cracked further. "I can explain," she breathed, voice shaking. I was lonely. You were never home. I felt unappreciated and stressed, and she clutched at her chest like she expected sympathy. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. She tried to cry, to look small and wounded, but the rehearsed tremble in her voice didn't match the months of lies she'd told. I didn't respond. I just picked up my phone, found the number of the man she'd been seeing, and hit call. She lunged forward. "Don't. Please don't." But it was too late. The phone rang twice before going to voicemail. And then, right in front of us, her screen lit up with a notification blocked. Her breath hitched. Her shoulders buckled. And then the real panic set in. "Please," she sobbed, grabbing my arm. "I'll change. I'll fix everything. I'll stop seeing him. I'll make this right. Please don't leave me. I'm begging you." Tears streamed down her face, raw and frantic. A desperate performance for an audience that no longer cared. I stood up slowly, reached into the folder, and pulled out the final document. Her eyes widened when she saw the heading. I didn't say a word. I placed the divorce papers in her trembling hands, turned around, and walked toward the door, leaving her. Crying behind me, the next week felt like watching the final act of a play I'd unknowingly been cast in. My lawyer had everything lined up. Ownership records, receipts, account statements, proof that nearly every major item in our home belonged legally, financially, and undeniably to me. So when the moving truck pulled up in front of the house early Saturday morning, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. Melissa rushed out of the bedroom, still in pajamas, eyes wide with confusion as two movers stepped inside. "What is this? What are they doing?" she demanded. I didn't raise my voice. I just handed the lead mover the list and said, "Go ahead." One by one, they started removing furniture, our sofa set, the dining table, the TV, the bed frame, everything I had bought, everything she had taken for granted. When they unplugged the refrigerator, Melissa finally snapped. "This is petty. You're being vindictive," she shouted, her voice cracking as she watched her cushioned lifestyle being carried piece by piece through the front door. "You can't just take everything." I looked at her steadily. "Every bill I paid, every double shift I worked, every sacrifice I made while you used the money to cheat on me." My voice stayed calm, almost too calm. "You mocked the very work that kept this roof over your head. You don't get to keep the things I built while you lied." Her phone rang. Her mother. I heard her say, "He's taking everything." And then she shoved the phone at me. "My mom wants to talk to you." I didn't take it. "Your mother didn't work those shifts," I said simply. I did. By noon, the house looked exactly how Melissa had made me feel for months empty. Meanwhile, my lawyer froze the joint accounts, documented the reclaimed property, and filed the asset protection paperwork. Melissa sat on the bare living room floor. Shaking with anger or fear I couldn't tell, I pulled one last envelope from my jacket and placed it in front of her. She looked up, eyes red, hands trembling. "This confirms," I said quietly. "You have no claim to my future income." Her mouth fell open and I walked out before she could speak. It didn't take long for the consequences to reach her. With the accounts frozen and the assets reclaimed, Melissa found herself standing in the middle of a hollow house with nothing but her clothes and a few cheap decor pieces she bought during sales. Within 2 weeks, she was forced to move into a tiny apartment, one of those cramped studio units where the kitchen sink sits an arm's length from the bed. She went from living off my income to scraping together whatever she could manage on her own. It was a life she'd never had to face before. The man she'd thrown everything away for didn't stick around. The moment her financial situation changed, he vanished. No calls, no texts, no explanations. She tried reaching him repeatedly, at first angry, then desperate, then pathetically hopeful, but every message delivered the same outcome: blocked. She tried to save face at first, telling mutual friends that she made a mistake, that she just needed attention, that she never meant to hurt me. But slowly, as her reality sank in, the guilt tripping began. Friends I hadn't heard from in months suddenly messaged me saying, "She's really struggling," or "She regrets everything," or "You should at least talk to her once." I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. Not out of pride. Out of self-preservation. For the first time in years, I focused on my own life. I went to the gym. I slept without feeling like my mind was on fire. I stopped counting overtime hours like survival rations and started thinking about what I wanted next. I remembered who I used to be before exhaustion and betrayal carved holes into me, and as the dust settled, I realized something surprising. Revenge wasn't the thing that healed me, it was the silence, the space, the absence of her peace. Felt better than the moment. I handed her the divorce papers. It felt cleaner, steadier, like I finally had room to breathe again, and for the first time the future didn't feel heavy. It felt possible. The divorce finalized on a quiet Tuesday morning. No courtroom outbursts, no dramatic showdowns as paperwork, signatures, and a judge who barely looked up as he confirmed the ruling. Melissa stood on the opposite side of the room, arms crossed tightly, face pale under the fluorescent lights. The evidence of her infidelity, financial misuse, and months of documented lies left no room for argument. The judge denied her alimony entirely. No monthly support, no rights to my future income, nothing. Walking out of the courthouse felt like stepping into sunlight after living underground. Over the next few months, my life shifted in a way I didn't expect. I left the factory and took a better job, one where I wasn't killing myself physically just to survive. I started running in the mornings, cooking real meals, talking to people I lost touch with. My apartment felt quiet, but it was a quiet I chose. Not the suffocating silence that used to weigh down my marriage. For the first time in years, I felt like I could hear my own thoughts. And they weren't angry. They weren't anxious. They were clear. Then one evening, just as I was settling into bed, my phone buzzed with a long message from an unknown number. I knew instantly it was her. The paragraphs were frantic, emotional, uneven. She talked about regret, loneliness, how she never realized what she had, how she didn't mean for things to go that far. She asked for closure, asked if we could talk, asked if she could stay with me just for a little while. And finally, she begged for one more chance. I stared at the message for a long moment. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, just calm. Then I blocked the number. No reply, no explanation, no final words. My life wasn't a revolving door she could walk through whenever her world collapsed. As I set my phone down, a steady quiet settled around me, stronger than revenge, deeper than closure. I didn't just walk away. I reclaimed my life, and she lost the one she tried to steal from me.